The sharp fluorescent lights pierced through my eyelids before I even opened them. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled my nostrils, mixing with something metallic that I slowly realized was my own blood. My left shoulder throbbed with a pain so intense it made my vision blur. I tried to move, but my body felt like it was made of lead. The steady beep of monitors surrounded me, creating a rhythm that matched my racing heartbeat. As my eyes finally focused, I saw white ceiling tiles, chrome fixtures, and realized I was in a hospital. But how did I get here? The last thing I remembered was the cold glint of the screwdriver in Jax's hand, Victor's mocking smirk, and my mother Serafina's laugh echoing through my bedroom as I collapsed. That laugh. That terrible, hollow laugh that confirmed what I had been too afraid to admit for years. My family wasn't just broken. They had tried to kill me. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, if you've ever questioned whether your pain was real because the people who should love you told you it wasn't, then stay with me. This story might be hard to hear, but I promise you, it ends with justice. Hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment below telling me about a time you had to choose yourself over toxic people. Your story matters too, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning. Back to when I still believed that family meant safety. I grew up thinking I was lucky. My mother Serafina and I lived in a cozy apartment that smelled like vanilla candles and fresh laundry. She worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat, but she never complained. Every morning, I would find little notes tucked into my lunchbox. "You're braver than you know," one would say. "The world is lucky to have you." Read another. Those notes were my armor against the world. I kept every single one in a shoebox under my bed. At 15, I had accumulated hundreds of them. Each one, a tiny promise that I was loved, that I mattered. Then Victor Thorne entered our lives like a storm you don't see coming until it's already destroyed everything. My mother met him at the hospital where she worked as a night shift nurse. He was visiting someone. I never found out who, but apparently, he spotted her at the coffee machine and decided she was worth pursuing. He was handsome in that polished, corporate way. Expensive suits, slicked back hair, a smile that looked practiced in the mirror. But his eyes, God, his eyes were cold, like looking into the depths of a frozen lake. When he smiled, it never reached those eyes. I noticed it immediately. But I was just a kid. What did I know? 6 months later, they were married. I remember standing at the courthouse in a dress my mother bought specifically for the occasion, watching her sign papers that would change our lives forever. Victor smiled at me once during the ceremony. That same empty smile. I felt a chill run down my spine but pushed it away. My mother was happy. That's what mattered. Right. Victor came with baggage. Specifically, his 17-year-old son Jax. Where Victor was cold and calculated, Jax was fire and chaos. He looked at me like I was an insect that had crawled into his space. On the day they moved into our apartment, which suddenly felt too small for 4 people, Jax cornered me in the hallway. "Just so we're clear," he said, his breath hot on my face. "This is my dad's house now. You and your mom are just guests." I was too shocked to respond. He smirked and walked away, leaving me frozen in place. The apartment that had once smelled like vanilla now smelled like Victor's cologne. Something woody and overwhelming that gave me headaches. My mother's little note stopped appearing in my lunch. When I asked her about it, she looked confused, like she couldn't remember ever doing such a thing. "Oh, Elara," she said, distracted, looking at her phone. "You're too old for that now." Anyway, I turned 16, and my body decided to rebel. At first, it was just tiredness. The kind where you wake up after 12 hours of sleep and feel like you haven't slept at all. Then came the joint pain. My knees would ache climbing the stairs. My fingers would stiffen when I tried to write. Some mornings, I couldn't get out of bed without help. My mother, to her credit, initially took me seriously. She brought me to doctor after doctor. Most of them dismissed me. Growing pains. They would say, "Teenage stress. Have you tried exercising more?" Then we met Dr. Eris Thorne. No relation to Victor. Thank God. She was a specialist in autoimmune disorders. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. After months of tests, she sat us down in her office and delivered the news. Alara has a rare autoimmune condition, she explained, looking directly at me, not just at my mother. Her immune system is essentially attacking her own body. It's chronic, meaning it won't go away, but it is manageable with proper medication, regular monitoring, and a stable, low-stress environment. I watched my mother's face as Dr. Thorne spoke. Serafina nodded, asked questions, squeezed my hand. For a moment, I felt that old security return. My mother would protect me. She always had. Dr. Thorne prescribed a cocktail of medications, some to manage the inflammation, others to regulate my immune system. They were expensive, even with insurance. But we would figure it out. We always did. Except Victor had other ideas. The first time I saw the medical bills, Victor was in the living room, papers spread across the coffee table. Jesus Christ, he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. These medication costs are insane. What is she taking? Gold pills. My mother was in the kitchen. She didn't respond. I stood in the doorway, feeling my face flush hot with shame. I'm sorry, I said quietly. The doctor said I need them. Victor looked up at me, his cold eyes assessing. You know, Elara, a lot of teenagers feel tired. It's part of growing up. Have you considered that maybe you just need to push through it? Build up your stamina? The implication was clear. I was weak. I was making excuses. I was costing them money for something that probably wasn't even real. Over the next few months, these comments became more frequent. Are you sure you need to take that many pills? Victor would ask at dinner, watching me sort through my evening medications. Seems excessive? Jax would chime in with his own brand of cruelty. Oh look, the princess needs her special medicine, he would announce whenever I pulled out my pill organizer. Everyone bow down. Her Majesty is suffering. His voice dripped with sarcasm that made my stomach turn. The worst part wasn't Victor or Jax. It was watching my mother slowly stop defending me. At first, she would tell them to stop. She has a real condition, Serafina would say firmly. But Victor had a way of wearing people down. He would sigh heavily, act hurt, suggest that Serafina was being too protective, that she was enabling me. Gradually, my mother's defenses crumbled. Her responses became weaker. Well, maybe she could try to push through sometimes, she would say. Then, the doctor might be over-medicating her. Finally, silence. When Jax made his cruel jokes, my mother said nothing. She wouldn't even look at me. My only lifeline was Chloe Davies. We had been best friends since 3rd grade. The kind of friendship that forms when two weird kids find each other on the playground and decide the world makes more sense together. Chloe had curly red hair that refused to be tamed and a laugh that could fill an entire room. More importantly, she believed me. When I called her crying because I couldn't get out of bed and my mother had already left for work without checking on me, Chloe would bike over with breakfast and her laptop so we could watch movies together. When I had doctor's appointments and Serafina was suddenly too busy, Chloe borrowed her mom's car and drove me. Your family is toxic, Chloe told me one day. We were sitting in her car outside Dr. Thorne's office after another checkup. You know that, right? I nodded, staring at my hands. I'm saving money, I said. I got a job at the library. Part-time. Something I can manage. Once I have enough, I'm leaving. Chloe reached over and squeezed my hand. Good. And when you do, you're not doing it alone. I've got your back. That library job became my escape. It was quiet. Predictable. I shelved books, helped patrons find materials, and slowly, carefully, saved every penny I could. I kept the cash in a locked box hidden in the back of my closet. It wasn't much, but it was hope in physical form. By the time I was 26, I had almost $800 saved. Not enough for a deposit and first month's rent. Not yet, but getting closer. But while I was saving, my family situation was deteriorating. At 26, I should have been independent. But my health made full-time work impossible, and the medication costs ate up most of what I did earn. I was trapped in that house, watching my mother transform into someone I didn't recognize. Serafina had become Victor's shadow. She echoed his opinions, laughed at his jokes. And worst of all, she started looking at me the way he did. With irritation, with skepticism, with barely concealed contempt. Elara, you need to take responsibility for yourself, she told me one evening. We were in the kitchen. She was preparing dinner, chopping vegetables with sharp, angry movements. Everyone has problems. You can't expect the world to cater to yours forever. I felt something crack inside my chest. Mom, I said, my voice shaking. I have a diagnosed medical condition. This isn't me being dramatic. Doctor. Thorne explained this. Serafina slammed the knife down on the cutting board. Don't you dare lecture me about your doctor. I'm the one who took you to her. I'm the one who has stood by you through all of this. But you stopped standing by me. I wanted to scream. You chose him. You chose them. Instead, I left the kitchen before she could see me cry. Then came the insurance incident. I was 26 years old when Victor called a family meeting. We all gathered in the living room. Him in his armchair, like some kind of king on a throne. I've been reviewing our finances, Victor announced, not looking at me. And I've made a decision. Elara, you're an adult now. It's time you took full responsibility for your medical expenses. I'm removing you from our family health insurance plan. The room tilted. My health insurance was the only thing keeping my medications affordable. Without it, I was looking at thousands of dollars a month. Money I absolutely did not have. You can't do that, I said, hearing the desperation in my own voice. I can't afford my medications without insurance. Victor shrugged. Then I suggest you find a way. Jax needs money for graduate school. That's an investment in his future. Your medications are an ongoing expense with no return. He said it so casually, like he was discussing whether to order pizza or Chinese food. My mother sat next to him on the couch. She was looking at her hands. Not at me. Mom, I said, pleading. Mom, please. Serafina took a deep breath. Elara, Victor has a point. We can't keep supporting you indefinitely. You need to figure this out. The betrayal was so absolute, so complete, that I couldn't even process it. I stood up and walked to my room on shaking legs. I heard Jax laugh as I left. That night, I cried until I made myself sick. The next few months were a nightmare. I tried to ration my medications, taking half doses, skipping days. My health deteriorated rapidly. The joint pain came back with a vengeance. I was exhausted all the time. Brain fog made it hard to think clearly. Eventually, I had to quit my library job. I just couldn't perform anymore. My boss was kind about it, but I saw the pity in her eyes. I had become exactly what Victor and Jax had always accused me of being, a burden. Without work. I had no income. Without income, I couldn't afford medication. Without medication, my health spiraled downward in a freefall that felt impossible to stop. It was a vicious cycle designed to break me, and I was drowning in it, gasping for air that never came. The worst part was watching it happen, being fully aware of the trap closing around me, yet being completely powerless to escape it. Victor noticed my deterioration. Of course, how could he not? But instead of concern, his observations came wrapped in cruelty, disguised as wisdom. You look absolutely terrible. Elara, he would announce at dinner, his voice carrying across the table with the casual indifference of someone commenting on the weather. He would pause, fork halfway to his mouth, studying me like I was a mildly interesting science experiment gone wrong. Maybe this is a wake-up call that you were over-medicated to begin with. Your body is probably just adjusting to functioning normally again. You should thank me for cutting you off. Really? Sometimes tough love is what people need. Jax's commentary grew sharper, meaner, each word carefully selected to cut deeper than the last. He had perfected the art of the psychological knife twist. So, Elara, how long exactly are you planning to milk this whole sick girl routine? He asked one evening, leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed, looking at me like I was something disgusting he'd found on his shoe. Let me get this straight. You quit your job. You barely leave your room except to shuffle around like a ghost. You're constantly complaining. At what point do you just admit the truth? You're not sick. You're just lazy. You found a good scam and you're riding it for all it's worth. I couldn't respond. My throat was too tight. My chest too heavy. I excused myself from the table and went to my room, where I pulled out the notebook I had started keeping hidden under my mattress. My hands shook as I wrote down the date and what had just been said. This journal had become my lifeline to sanity. The only proof I had that I wasn't imagining things. That this was really happening. I documented everything with the meticulous care of someone who knew they were gathering evidence for a trial where they would be both witness and defendant. The pills that would go missing from my bottles, never all at once, but just enough to make me question myself. 3 pills here, 5 there. The important mail that would vanish before I could open it. Appointment reminder cards that never made it to my room. Bills that disappeared, only to resurface weeks later with late fees attached. The food I had specifically bought with my last few dollars and carefully labeled with my name that would be gone from the refrigerator within hours. Someone would eat my yogurt, drink my milk, take my carefully portioned meals, leaving the empty containers as if to mock me. I wrote it all down because I needed to believe I wasn't going crazy. Because that was exactly what they were trying to make me believe. Are you sure you didn't move it, and maybe you're just forgetting things was designed to make me doubt my own mind. My own reality. Gaslighting. I would later learn it was called, but in that moment, I just knew I was losing my grip on what was real. The medication incident was the moment everything crystallized into horrifying clarity. I went to take my evening dose. The medications that kept my body from attacking itself, and felt my stomach drop. The bottle felt too light. I opened it and counted the pills inside. Then I counted again. Then a third time. My hands trembling so badly I almost dropped them. 10 pills were missing from a bottle I had just refilled 3 days ago. 10. That wasn't a mistake. That wasn't me forgetting. That was theft. That was sabotage. My heart hammered against my ribs as I walked down the hallway toward the living room. Every step felt like moving through concrete. I found Jax exactly where I expected him. Sprawled on the couch with a game controller in his hands. Completely absorbed in shooting zombies on the massive TV. Victor had bought him for Christmas. The same Christmas where I had received a card with $20 in it and a note that said, "For your medications, try to make it last." Jax. My voice came out steadier than I felt, though I could hear the slight waver underneath. "Did you take my medication?" He didn't even pause his game. His thumbs continued working the controller. His eyes fixed on the screen where digital blood splattered across a post-apocalyptic landscape. "What medication?" His voice was bored. Dismissive. The tone you'd use with a persistent telemarketer. "My migraine pills. The anti-inflammatory ones in the white bottle." I held up the container, rattling it, so he could hear how empty it sounded. "There are 10 missing. I just picked up the prescription on Monday." Now he paused the game. The sudden silence was deafening. He turned to look at me with deliberate slowness, and that familiar smirk spread across his face. It was the same expression a cat might wear while toying with a mouse. "Maybe you took them and forgot," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "I mean, you've been pretty out of it lately." "Right, brain fog. Wasn't that one of your symptoms? Memory problems?" He tilted his head. "Studying me, you know, with all your various mysterious ailments. Forgetting you took your pills seems pretty on brand. Should probably mention that to your doctor." "Oh wait. You don't go to the doctor anymore because we're not paying for it. Guess you'll just have to wonder if you're losing your mind or losing your pills. Either way, sounds like a you problem." The rage that flooded through me was so intense I could taste it. Metallic and sharp. My whole body shook with the effort of not screaming. Not launching myself at him. Not breaking down completely. Instead, I turned and walked away. My footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor. Behind me, I heard him laugh and unpause his game. In my room with the door locked, I called Dr. Thorne's office with shaking fingers. The receptionist was sympathetic and squeezed me in for an emergency appointment the following Tuesday. "Just hang in there, Miss Anderson," she said kindly. "Dr. Thorne will want to hear about this. This isn't normal." I marked it on my calendar. Tuesday. 4 days away. I could make it 4 more days. I had to. Tuesday morning. I woke up with a flutter of hope in my chest. Today I would see Dr. Thorne. Today I would tell her everything. Today someone would believe me. I was getting dressed when my phone rang. Dr. Thorne's office. Maybe they were confirming the appointment time. Miss Anderson. The receptionist's voice was apologetic. I'm so sorry about this, but we need to cancel your appointment today. We received a call earlier this morning, about an hour ago, saying you needed to reschedule because something came up. The floor dropped out from under me. What? No. I didn't call. I didn't reschedule. I need that appointment. There was a confused pause. Oh no. The caller said they were calling on your behalf. Said you were too sick to call yourself but needed to push the appointment to next month. Another pause. Miss Anderson, if you didn't make that call, then who did? I closed my eyes. My voice came out flat. Dead. Someone in this house. Someone who doesn't want me to see my doctor. I could hear the receptionist's sharp intake of breath, the beginning of concerned questions. But I couldn't handle it. I'll call back to reschedule. Thank you. I hung up before she could respond. That's when I knew with absolute, crystalline certainty. This wasn't just neglect or casual cruelty. This wasn't Victor being cheap or Jax being mean. This was calculated, deliberate, systematic sabotage. Someone was actively trying to prevent me from getting medical care. Someone was stealing my medication. Someone was cutting me off from the outside world, isolating me, making me completely dependent on them, while simultaneously punishing me for that dependence. They were trying to destroy me, piece by piece, pill by pill, lie by lie. I told Chloe everything that afternoon. We sat in her car outside a coffee shop, one of the few places I still had enough energy to go. I was so exhausted I could barely hold my head up, but the words poured out in a desperate flood. The stolen pills, the canceled appointment, the feeling of walls closing in, the certainty that something terrible was coming. Chloe's face went from concerned to furious to terrified in the span of my story. When I finished, she grabbed my hands, her grip almost painful in its intensity. Elada, you need to get out of there. Not eventually. Not when you've saved enough money. Now. Today. Right now. Come stay with me. My parents won't care. We'll figure out the rest later. But you cannot go back to that house. I wanted to say yes. God. I wanted to say yes so badly. But fear and practicality warred in my mind. I need to save a little more money. I heard myself saying, even though it sounded stupid even to my own ears. Just a few more months. I'm so close to having enough for a deposit and first month's rent on my own place. If I leave now with nothing, I'll be a burden on you and your family. I can't do that. You're not a burden, Chloe said fiercely. You're my best friend and you're in danger. Please. Elada. Please don't go back there. But I did go back. Because I didn't know where else to go. Because I had been trained my whole life to endure. To sacrifice. To not cause trouble. Because I didn't yet understand how little time I actually had left. That night, I went back to that house, and I felt the walls close in a little tighter. I didn't have a few more months. I didn't even have a few more weeks. Because Jax was done with subtle. Jax was escalating, and I was too naive, too conditioned to endure, to see just how dangerous he had become. It started with small violations that could be explained away, dismissed, rationalized. My toothbrush would be moved from where I left it, appearing in different spots in the bathroom each morning. Or it would be knocked onto the floor, bristles touching the tile. Once I found it in the kitchen sink. When I asked about it, everyone looked at me like I was paranoid. Maybe you moved it and forgot, became the standard response to everything. My room started smelling like cigarette smoke, even though no one was supposed to smoke in the house. The acrid stench would hit me when I opened my door, making my eyes water. When I complained, Victor said I was imagining things. I don't smell anything, he'd say, sniffing the air with exaggerated motions. Maybe it's your medication making you oversensitive to smells. Oh wait, you're not taking your medication properly anymore. Are you? The implication was clear. Everything wrong was my fault. My perception, my problem. My things would be moved around. Books I'd left on my nightstand would be on my desk. Clothes I'd hung in the closet would be on the floor. My journal. The one where I documented everything. And disappeared for 3 days and then reappeared exactly where I'd left it. But I knew someone had moved it, had read it, had seen every desperate word I'd written. The violation of that felt worse than anything physical. Then came the night that changed everything. The night I realized Jax wasn't just cruel. He was dangerous. I woke at 2 in the morning to the sound that every person living in fear knows instantly. The soft, almost inaudible sound of my doorknob turning. Slowly, carefully, testing to see if it was locked. My eyes snapped open in the darkness. My heart immediately jackhammering in my chest. I lay frozen in my bed, barely breathing, watching the doorknob turn a fraction of an inch to the right, then stop, then turn back, then try again. I had started locking my door after the medication incident, pushing my desk chair under the knob for extra security. Now, lying in the dark, listening to someone try to get into my room while I slept, I understood that instinct had probably saved me. The doorknob stopped moving. There was silence. Long enough that I thought whoever it was had left. Then I heard it. Breathing. Just on the other side of the door. Someone was standing there. Listening. Waiting. The breathing was slow. Controlled. Patient. It wasn't the breathing of someone who had accidentally tried the wrong door. It was the breathing of a predator deciding whether to keep hunting or wait for easier prey. I don't know how long I lay there in the dark, listening to someone breathe on the other side of my locked door. It felt like hours. It was probably minutes. Eventually, I heard footsteps retreating down the hallway. Quiet but not quiet enough. Then the sound of another door closing. Jax's room. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I lay in bed watching the door. Watching the doorknob. Wondering what would have happened if I hadn't locked it. What was he planning to do? Scare me? Hurt me? Take more of my medication? Something worse that I didn't want to imagine? The next morning at breakfast, Jax acted completely. Perfectly normal. He ate his cereal, scrolled through his phone, complained about traffic on his commute. He didn't look at me any differently. Didn't acknowledge anything unusual had happened. And that was somehow more terrifying than if he had threatened me openly, because it meant he was comfortable doing this. It meant he had done it before and would do it again. It meant he felt completely untouchable. But I saw something in his eyes when they finally met mine across the table. Just for a second. Just a flash. Before he looked away. It wasn't guilt or shame or even anger. It was satisfaction. And underneath that, a challenge. A message transmitted in that brief moment of eye contact. I know you know it was me. And there's nothing you can do about it. Who would believe you? Who would take your side? You're alone in this house. And we both know it. I was 26 years old, chronically ill, financially dependent, and trapped in a house with someone who came to my door in the middle of the night, someone who was stealing my medication, someone who was cutting me off from medical care, someone who was isolating me from the outside world, and the two people who should have protected me, who should have believed me, who should have thrown him out for what he was doing. Instead, ate breakfast and pretended everything was fine. That morning, I knew with absolute certainty that if I didn't get out soon, something terrible was going to happen. I just didn't know how terrible. I didn't know how soon. And I definitely didn't know that the worst was yet to come. Things came to a head over dinner one night. I had been checking my hidden money that afternoon, counting and recounting, planning. $823. So close. But when I checked again that evening, my heart stopped. The box was there, still locked. But when I opened it, it was empty. Every single dollar was gone. I tore my room apart, thinking maybe I had moved it. Maybe I was confused. But no, someone had picked the lock and taken everything. I stormed into the dining room, where the family was eating. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to clench them into fists. Someone took my money. I said. My voice came out louder than I intended. All of it. $823. It's gone. Victor looked up from his plate. His expression, one of practiced concern. Are you sure you didn't spend it and forget? Alara, you've been quite scattered lately. I didn't forget, I said through gritted teeth. Someone stole it. I turned to Jax. Your car. You got it fixed this week. That costs money. Jax leaned back in his chair, looking amused. Are you seriously accusing me of stealing from you right now? Did you take my money to fix your car? I demanded. The amusement left his face, replaced by something darker. You've got some nerve, he said, standing up. First you freeload off my dad for years. Then you accuse me of being a thief in front of everyone. Victor stood too, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. That's enough. Elada, you don't get to come in here making wild accusations. Jax is not a thief. I looked at my mother. Desperate. Mom, please. You know I had that money. I showed it to you. I told you I was saving to move out. Serafina's face was troubled, but when she spoke, her words cut deep. Elada, honey, first it was the missing pills. Then the appointment that got mysteriously cancelled. Now money disappearing. Do you hear yourself? At some point, you need to consider that, maybe, just maybe, you're the common denominator in all these problems. The implication was clear. I was making it all up. I was crazy. I was the problem. I wanted to argue, to fight. But what was the point? They had already decided. I was the villain in their story. I went to my room and locked the door. I pushed my desk chair under the doorknob for extra security. Then I sat on my bed and cried until I had no tears left. Around 10 that night, there was a knock. Elada. Jax's voice came through the door, deceptively calm. Open up. We need to talk. My entire body went cold. Go away, I called back. Come on, he said. Don't be like that. I just want to apologize. I didn't believe him for a second. I pulled out my phone and started a voice recording, then called out, What do you want? Jax, there was a pause. Then, you really shouldn't have accused me at dinner. That was stupid. His voice had lost all pretense of friendliness. Did you take my money? I asked, making sure my phone was recording clearly. He laughed. Does it matter? Technically, everything in this house belongs to my dad. That makes it mine too. You don't own anything here. Elada? Not really. You're just living off our charity. I saved that money, I said. Anger, overwhelming fear. I earned it. Another laugh. Colder this time. Oh, and another thing. I saw your messages to Chloe. About moving out. About how terrible we supposedly are. Did you forget we're all on the family cloud backup? I can see everything you send. My blood turned to ice. I had forgotten about that. When Victor had added me to the family phone plan years ago, he had set up a shared cloud account. Everything I texted, every photo I took, every note I wrote. He and Jax could access it all. They had been reading my private conversations. They knew I was planning to leave. They knew everything. Here's the thing. Elada. Jax continued, his voice taking on a menacing edge. If something were to happen to you, if you tried to leave and told people lies about us, who do you think they'd believe? The successful businessman and his hard-working son, or the girl with the mysterious illness who's been slowly losing her grip on reality? Think about it. It wasn't just a warning. It was a threat. After he left, I immediately sent the recording to Chloe with a message. If anything happens to me, you need to hear this. Then I called Dr. Thorne. She answered on the third ring, sounding concerned. Elara, it's late. Is everything okay? I told her everything. The missing medications. The stolen money. The threats. There was a long silence. Then Dr. Thorne said firmly, Elada, what you're describing is medical abuse and neglect. This is a dangerous situation. You need to leave that house as soon as possible. Can you stay with a friend? I thought about Chloe's offer. Yes, I said. I'll figure something out. Do it this week. Doctor. Ton it will. Don't wait. And Elara, please be careful. Document everything. If they've been tampering with your medications, that's a criminal offense. I promised her I would leave soon. Chloe and I made a plan. Friday night, she would come get me while everyone was asleep. I would pack only essentials. We would figure out the rest later. But I didn't make it to Friday. Wednesday night, I went to take my evening medication and immediately knew something was wrong. The pills looked different. Same bottle. Same label. But the pills themselves were a slightly different shade. A different shape. These weren't my medications. Someone had switched them. I felt like I couldn't breathe. What had I been taking for the past few days? What were these pills? I didn't take them. Instead, I called Dr. Thorne again, left an urgent voicemail, and locked myself in my room. I pushed the chair under the doorknob. I piled books against the door for extra weight. Then I sat on my bed with my phone, waiting for morning. I must have dozed off around midnight, because I woke to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, deliberate footsteps that stopped right outside my door. It was 3 a.m, according to my phone. The house should have been silent. Everyone should have been asleep. But someone was outside my door. I heard the doorknob turn slowly, testing it. Locked. Then came a different sound. Scraping. Metal on metal. Someone was trying to pick the lock. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. Elada. Jax's voice came through the door. Low and angry. I know you're awake. Open the door. No way in hell. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911. But before I could dial, there was a loud crack. The chair under the doorknob was giving way. Another crack. The door burst open, sending the chair skidding across the floor. Jax stood in the doorway, his face twisted with rage. In his hand, he held a screwdriver. The long kind from Victor's toolbox. You stupid bitch, he snarled, stepping into my room. You think you can just leave, tell people about us, ruin everything my dad built. I scrambled backward on my bed, my back hitting the wall. Get out of my room, I said, but my voice came out weak, terrified. This is not your room, Jack said, advancing. This is not your house. You don't get to make demands. I tried to grab my phone, to call for help, but Jax was faster. He lunged forward, and I felt a searing, white-hot pain explode in my left shoulder. The pain was so intense I couldn't even scream at first. I looked down in shock and saw the screwdriver buried in my shoulder, Jax's hand still gripping the handle. Then the scream came. It tore from my throat, raw and primal. Jax jumped back, looking almost surprised at what he had done. The screwdriver was still in my shoulder. I could feel the warm wetness of blood spreading across my shirt. The pain was overwhelming, making my vision blur and darken around the edges. Victor and Serafina burst into the room. For one wild, hopeful moment, I thought they would help me. They would see what Jax had done and protect me. But Jax was already talking, his voice panicked but calculated. She attacked me, he said quickly. I came to check on her because I heard noise. And she went crazy. She came at me with the screwdriver. I was just defending myself. That's not true, I gasped, each word sending fresh waves of agony through my shoulder. He broke into my room. He attacked me. I looked at my mother, pleading, Mom, please, please help me. Serafina looked at the screwdriver sticking out of my shoulder. Blood was pooling on my sheets, dripping onto the floor. And then, God help me, she laughed. It wasn't a full laugh, more like a scoff, but the sound of it broke something fundamental inside me. Oh, Elada, she said, shaking her head. Seriously, it's just a scratch. You're being so dramatic. Victor stepped closer, examining the wound with the detached interest of someone looking at a car with a dent. Christ, Elada, if you wanted attention, there are better ways to get it. Pull that thing out and put a bandage on it. You're making a mess of the carpet. They thought I was faking it. The screwdriver was literally embedded in my shoulder. I was bleeding heavily, and they thought I was being dramatic. The realization was somehow more painful than the physical wound. Get out, I whispered. Then, louder, drawing on reserves of strength I didn't know I had. Get out of my room. They left. All 3 of them. Victor was chuckling, saying something about teenagers and drama. Serafina muttered about having to clean the carpet. Jax looked back once, and in his eyes I saw something that chilled me to the bone. Not remorse. Satisfaction. They closed the door behind them. I was alone, with a screwdriver in my shoulder, bleeding heavily. And no one was coming to help. My phone. I needed my phone. I felt around with my right hand, my left arm completely useless, screaming in agony with every small movement. Finally, I grasped it. My fingers were slippery with blood, making it hard to unlock the screen. I managed to pull up Chloe's contact and sent a text. My vision was getting fuzzy, and my hands were shaking so badly, I had to retype several times. Emergency. Jack stabbed me. Parents won't help. Bleeding bad. Call 911. I hit send and then everything started to fade. The room tilted. Sounds became distant and echoing. I heard sirens. Far away. Getting closer. Or maybe I was imagining them. The last thing I remember before everything went black was thinking how strange it was that my mother's laugh was the last sound I would hear. After everything, after all those little notes in my lunchbox, after all the promises of protection and love, it ended with her laughing at me, bleeding out on my bedroom floor. I woke up to the sound of beeping, different from before, steadier. I opened my eyes to find white ceiling tiles, but different ones, cleaner, brighter. A hospital. I tried to move and immediately regretted it as pain lanced through my shoulder. But it was a different pain. Cleaner. Managed. Someone had removed the screwdriver. Someone had helped me. Hey. Don't move. Chloe's face swam into view above me, her eyes red and puffy from crying. You're okay. You're in the hospital. You're safe. Safe. The word felt foreign. What happened? I croaked. My throat was raw, probably from screaming. Chloe pulled a chair close to my bed and took my hand carefully, avoiding the IV. I got your text and called 911 immediately. Then I drove over. The ambulance was already there when I arrived. Your family. She said the word with such venom. I tried to tell the paramedics you were overreacting, that it was a minor injury, but the paramedics took one look at you and knew it was serious. You'd lost a lot of blood. Helada. They said if I had waited even 15 minutes more to call, you might have died. The weight of that settled over me. I had nearly died. And my family had watched it happen. Laughing. The police came too. Chloe continued. I told them everything. Showed them the recording you sent me of Jax threatening you. Told them about the stolen money. The medications. All of it. They arrested Jax at the scene. What about Victor and Serafina? I asked. Clue's expression hardened. They tried to cover for him. Kept insisting it was self-defense. That you had attacked him first. But the police weren't buying it. Not with your injuries. Not with the evidence. As if on cue, there was a knock on the door. A woman in her 30s entered, wearing a sharp suit and carrying a briefcase. She had kind eyes but a serious demeanor. Miss Anderson. I'm Sarah Chen. Assistant District Attorney. I wanted to speak with you about what happened. If you're feeling up to it, over the next hour. I told her everything, every incident, every threat, every pill that went missing, every dollar stolen. Chloe provided the recording like the text messages, everything she had. Sarah listened intently, taking notes, her expression growing grimmer by the minute. Miss Anderson, she said when I finished. What happened to you is not only assault with a deadly weapon, it's also medical abuse, financière exploitation, and neglect. I'm building a case against Jax Wilson, but I need you to know this is going to be difficult. His family has resources. They've already hired a very expensive lawyer. I don't care, I said, surprised by the strength in my own voice. I want him held accountable. I want them all held accountable. Sarah smiled. Good. Because I'm going to fight like hell for you. The next few weeks were a blur. Dr. Thorne came to visit, bringing my actual medications and personally supervising my treatment. She was furious when she learned about the switched pills. Lab analysis would later show they were simply sugar pills, designed to look like my medication but completely ineffective. The police executed a search warrant on the Thorne Vance house. In Jax's room, they found my missing pills. Nearly $600 in cash that matched the serial numbers I had recorded from some of my larger bills. And most damning, a notebook where Jax had practiced forging my signature. My signature. They also found evidence that Jax had accessed my email and social media accounts. He had canceled my doctor's appointments. He had redirected important mail. He had even created fake posts on my Facebook account claiming I was mentally ill and making up my medical condition for attention. The investigation expanded. The prosecutor charged Jax with assault with a deadly weapon, theft, fraude, and exploitation of a vulnerable adult, the last charge because of my documented medical condition. Victor and Serafina stood by him through it all. They gave interviews to local media, painting me as an unstable, ungrateful stepdaughter who had attacked their innocent son. Serafina actually told a reporter that I had a history of self-harm and that she suspected I had stabbed myself for attention. Dr. Thorne released a statement, with my permission, refuting these claims and confirming my diagnosis and the medical abuse I had suffered. The trial was set for 3 months later. Those 3 months, I lived with Chloe and her family. Her parents welcomed me without question, treating me with a kindness that made me weep. I attended therapy twice a week. My therapist, Dr. Marina Torres, helped me understand what I had experienced. You were in an abusive situation, she told me in one session. Not just Jax, but your mother and stepfather too? They enabled his behavior. They participated in your abuse. And when you were in crisis, they chose him over you. Hearing it stated so plainly was painful but also liberating. It wasn't my fault. I hadn't imagined it. I wasn't crazy. I was a victim, and I was a survivor. As my physical health stabilized with proper medication and a stress-free environment, I felt stronger than I had in years. The fog lifted from my mind. The constant pain lessened. I started to feel like myself again, or maybe like a new version of myself. Someone who had been through hell and come out the other side. The trial itself was intense. The courtroom was packed. Victor had clearly called in favors, filling the gallery with supporters. On my side sat Chloe, her parents, Dr. Thorne, Dr. Torres, and members of a support group for medical abuse survivors that I had joined. Sarah Chen was brilliant. She systematically dismantled every lie the defense tried to tell. She presented the medical evidence, the recordings, the text messages, the forged signatures. She called Dr. Thorne to testify about my condition and the deliberate medical neglect I had suffered. When it was the defense's turn, Victor took the stand first. He painted a picture of me as a manipulative, lazy young woman who had exploited their generosity for years. We gave her a home, he said earnestly. We paid for everything, and this is how she repays us, by making false accusations against my son. Sarah's cross-examination was devastating. Mr. Thorne, you testified that you removed Miss Anderson from your health insurance because she needed to take responsibility for herself. Is that correct? Victor nodded. Yes. She was 26 years old. Time to grow up. And you were aware that without insurance, her medications would cost over $2,000 per month, Sarah asked. I assumed she would figure it out. Get a better job. She had a job. See, at the library. She quit because her untreated medical condition made it impossible to work. A condition that worsened directly due to your decision to remove her insurance. Sarah let that hang in the air. Did you at any point consider that removing a chronically ill person's access to necessary medication might be harmful? Victor shifted uncomfortably. I thought maybe she was over-medicating, that the doctors were being too cautious. Sarah pulled out Dr. Thorne's original diagnosis and treatment plan. This is the medical opinion of a board-certified specialist. Are you also a doctor? Mr. Thorne. The answer, of course, was no. Serafina's testimony was even worse. She took the stand wearing a pale blue dress that made her look fragile and sad. She cried as she described me as a difficult child who had always been prone to exaggeration. I loved her, Serafina said, dabbing at her eyes. I did everything for her. But nothing was ever enough. There was always some new crisis. Some new problem. Sarah approached the stand slowly. Mrs. Wilson, you testified that you loved your daughter. Is that correct? Serafina nodded. Sniffling. Yes. Of course. Then can you explain to the court why, when you found your daughter with a screwdriver embedded in her shoulder, bleeding heavily, you laughed? The courtroom went silent. Serafina's face went pale. I didn't. I mean, it wasn't like that. We have testimony from the paramedics who arrived on scene. They stated that you and your husband were dismissive of Miss Anderson's injuries, that you referred to it as a scratch and suggested she was being dramatic. When a screwdriver was visibly protruding from her shoulder, Sarah's voice was sharp. Precise. Mrs. Wilson, your daughter nearly died from blood loss. The emergency room doctor will testify that 15 more minutes without treatment could have been fatal. And your response was to laugh and tell her to put a bandage on it. Serafina's lawyer objected. But the damage was done. The jury looked at her with disgust. When it was my turn to testify, I was terrified. But as I sat in the witness stand and looked at the jury, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't that scared girl anymore. I was someone who had survived. Someone who deserved to be heard. I told them everything in a clear, steady voice. I described the years of escalating abuse, the medications that disappeared, the money that was stolen, the threats, and finally, that terrible night. They saw the screwdriver in my shoulder. I said, my voice breaking slightly. They saw me bleeding. And they laughed. My mother, the woman who used to leave love notes in my lunchbox, told me I was being dramatic. Victor told me to pull it out myself and clean up the mess. They left me there. They let me think I was going to die alone in that room. There wasn't a dry eye in the jury box. Dr. Thorne's testimony corroborated my medical history. Chloe testified about the recording and the months of evidence she had helped me document. The medical examiner who had treated me in the emergency room testified about the severity of my injuries and the signs of long-term medical neglect he had observed. Then came Jax's testimony. His lawyer had coached him well. He maintained his story that I had attacked him first. He was calm, almost sympathetic. I feel bad that it came to this, he said, looking at the jury. Alara has a lot of problems. Mental health issues. I think we tried to help her, but she was so angry all the time. That night, she completely lost it. I had to defend myself. Sarah let him talk. She let him spin his story, looking confident. Then she began her cross-examination. Mr. Wilson, you testified that Miss Anderson attacked you with the screwdriver. Is that correct? Jax nodded. Yes. And you were defending yourself when you stabbed her, another nod. I had to stop her. Sarah walked to the evidence table and picked up a photograph. This is an image of Miss Anderson's wound taken in the emergency room. The forensic analysis shows that the angle of penetration is consistent with a downward thrust from someone standing over a victim who was seated or lying down, not consistent with self-defense against an attacker. Can you explain this discrepancy? Jax's composure cracked slightly. She was coming at me. I pushed her back. She must have fallen. The wound shows no signs of a fall. It shows signs of a deliberate, forceful stabbing motion. Sarah moved closer. Mr. Wilson, you also testified that you took the screwdriver from Miss Anderson, but the screwdriver was found to have only your fingerprints on it, not hers. How do you explain that? Jax was sweating now. She must have. I don't know. Maybe she wiped it or something before. Wiped it while attacking you. That seems unlikely. Sarah pulled out more documents. Let's talk about the medications. The sugar pills found in Miss Anderson's prescription bottles. The pills that nearly killed her by depriving her of necessary treatment, those were found in your room. How did they get there? I have no idea, Jax said, but his voice was getting louder. Defensive. Maybe she put them there to frame me. While she was in the hospital recovering from the wound you inflicted, Sarah's tone was skeptical. Let's discuss the money. $823 that went missing from Miss Anderson's locked box. $600 in marked bills were found in your room. The bills matched serial numbers Miss Anderson had recorded. How do you explain that? That's not... I don't. Jax was stammering now. Sarah wasn't done. And the notebook where you practiced forging her signature, the evidence that you accessed her email to cancel medical appointments and spread false information about her. How do you explain all of this? She's lying. Jax suddenly exploded. standing up in the witness box. She's making all of this up to destroy my family. She never belonged with us. She was always trying to cause problems. Always claiming she was sick. Always needing attention. My dad paid for everything. And she was never grateful. She didn't deserve those medications. She didn't need them. It was all fake. All an act to get sympathy. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. Jax's lawyer was trying to get him to sit down. To stop talking. But he couldn't stop. Years of resentment came pouring out. That money was mine anyway. Everything in that house was ours. Not hers. She didn't contribute anything, just taking, and when I tried to help her see that she was faking, tried to help her stop being so dependent. She threatens to ruin us. She was going to tell lies about us to everyone. So you tried to stop her, Sarah said calmly. And when she wouldn't be quiet, when she kept pushing back, you decided to permanently silence her. I didn't. I just wanted. Jack stopped. Realizing what he had admitted, his lawyer had his head in his hands. Victor looked stricken. Serafina was crying. But this time they were real tears. Tears of realization that her son had just confessed to attempted murder in front of a jury. The courtroom was dead silent. Even the judge looked shocked. Sarah turned to the jury. No further questions. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, the 4 women stood and read the verdict. We find the defendant, Jax Wilson, guilty on all counts. Guilty of assault with a deadly weapon. Guilty of theft. Guilty of fraud. Guilty of exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Guilty of attempted murder. The last charge had been added after his outburst. His own words had sealed his fate. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Margaret Lewis was a woman in her 60s, with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She looked at Jax with cold disdain. Mr. Wilson. The evidence presented in this trial paints a picture of a young man who systematically tormented and abused a vulnerable person in his home. You stole from her. You tampered with her life-saving medications. You isolated her. You threatened her. And when she tried to escape your abuse, you attempted to kill her. She turned to Victor and Serafina, who were sitting in the front row. While you two are not on trial here today, I want to make something abundantly clear. The evidence shows that you enabled and participated in the abuse of Miss Anderson. You witnessed her medical neglect and did nothing. When you saw her grievously injured, you mocked her and refused to provide aid. Your failure to protect a vulnerable member of your household is morally reprehensible. She looked back at Jax. I hereby sentence you to 8 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole for 6 years. Jax's face went white. Victor stood up, shouting objections. But court officers quickly removed him. Serafina sobbed loudly. But I felt nothing watching her. No satisfaction. No anger. Just emptiness where she used to be. Judge Lewis wasn't finished. Furthermore, I am referring this case to Adult Protective Services for investigation into Mr. Thorne and Mrs. Wilson's conduct. Medical neglect and abuse do not stop being crimes just because the victim is over 18. She turned to me, her expression softening. Miss Anderson, this court recognizes your courage in coming forward. No one should have to fight this hard to be believed about their own lived experience. I hope this verdict brings you some measure of peace and vindication. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. It was over. After years of abuse, months of investigation, and weeks of trial, it was finally over. As we left the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. Sarah Chen gave a brief statement praising my bravery and warning about the signs of medical abuse. I said nothing. I just wanted to go home. Not to that house. Never again to that house. Home to Chloe's place, where I was safe. 6 months have passed since the trial. I live in a small apartment now. 1 bedroom, with big windows that let in lots of light. I have a cat. A gray tabby I named Luna. She curls up next to me when my joints ache, like she knows. My shoulder healed, though I have a scar. It's about 2 inches long. A pale line that runs from my collarbone toward my shoulder blade. Sometimes I trace it with my fingers and remember, but it's not a mark of weakness. It's proof that I survived. With consistent medical care and a stable, stress-free environment, my health has improved dramatically. I still have bad days. The autoimmune condition hasn't gone away. But I have a routine now. I take my actual medications on schedule. I see Dr. Thorne regularly. I go to therapy. I'm taking care of myself in a way I never could in that house. I work part-time at an independent bookstore. A place that smells like paper and coffee. My coworkers are kind. They don't mind if I need to sit down sometimes. Or if I need to leave early on bad days. The civil lawsuit I filed against Victor and Serafina for medical neglect and financial exploitation settled out of court. The payout was substantial enough to cover my medical expenses and give me a cushion of financial security I've never had before. I didn't do it for the money, though the money helps. I did it because they needed to face consequences too. They enabled everything that happened. They chose Jax over me again and again. They watched me suffer and did nothing. I attend a support group for survivors of familial abuse. Hearing other people's stories, I realized how common my experience is. How many people have been gaslit by the people who should protect them? How many chronically ill people face skepticism and neglect? I'm not alone. None of us are. Chloe is still my best friend. She helped me paint my apartment, a warm yellow that feels like sunshine. She brings over bad movies and good snacks when I'm having rough days. She never once doubted me. Never once questioned whether my pain was real. That kind of friendship is family. Dr. Thorne. Sarahchen. Dr. Torres. My support group. My coworkers at the bookstore. These people are my family now. The family I chose. My mother called me last month. I had changed my number after the trial, but somehow, she got the new one. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity, or maybe some last shred of hope, made me pick up. Elara, Serafina said. Her voice small. I need to tell you that I'm sorry. I left Victor. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to understand what happened. How I let things get so bad. Can we talk? Can we try to fix this? I sat with that for a long moment, holding the phone, feeling nothing. Thank you for the apology. I finally said. My voice was calm, measured. But I need you to understand something. I'm not ready for a relationship with you. Maybe I never will be. What you did, watching Jack stab me and laughing, that broke something that might not be fixable. I'm healing, but I'm healing without you. Elara, please. She started, but I cut her off. I need to go now. I hope you get the help you need. I really do, but I can't be part of that process. Goodbye. Mom. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt lighter. I didn't need her approval anymore. I didn't need her to validate my pain. I was valid on my own. I've started writing about my experience. Just in a journal for now. But maybe someday I'll share it more widely. Because I wish someone had told me years ago that what I was experiencing had a name. Medical abuse. Gaslighting. Financial exploitation. Familial abuse. I wish someone had told me that I wasn't crazy. That my pain mattered. That I deserved better. My story has a message. Healing isn't about erasing the past. It's not about forgetting what happened or pretending the scars don't exist. Healing is about building a future where those wounds don't define you anymore. It's about recognizing your worth, independent of the people who tried to diminish it. It's about choosing yourself, even when it's the hardest thing you've ever done. The screwdriver that was meant to silence me became the catalyst for finding my voice. Jax thought he could make me disappear. Instead, he forced me to fight for my right to exist, to be believed, to be safe. And I won. Not just in court, but in life. I have an apartment filled with light. I have friends who are family. I have a cat who purrs when I'm sad. I have medications that work and doctors who listen. I have a future that I'm building one day at a time. Some days are hard. Some days the pain flares up and I'm reminded of everything I've lost. But even on those days, I look around my apartment. At Luna sleeping in a sunbeam. At the books I've collected. At the life I've created. And I know I made the right choice. The family I was born into taught me what love isn't. The family I've chosen is teaching me what it is. Love doesn't laugh when you're bleeding. Love doesn't steal from you or sabotage your health. Love doesn't make you question your reality or minimize your pain. Love believes you. Love supports you. Love lets you be imperfect and sick and struggling without making you feel like a burden. That's the lesson I'm holding on to as I move forward. Not all family is biological. Not all love is unconditional. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who hurt you. Even if they share your blood. Especially if they share your blood. So here I am, 27 years old. Living in a small apartment with a cat and a collection of houseplants, I'm learning not to kill. Working part-time at a bookstore. Going to therapy. Taking my medications. Building a life that is entirely, beautifully mine. The scar on my shoulder is just a scar. Not a weakness. Not a failure. A reminder that I survived. A reminder that I fought back. A reminder that I chose myself when no one else would. And I would make that choice again every single time. To everyone listening to this story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to choose yourself over people who were supposed to love you? Have you ever had to walk away from toxicity? Even when it meant losing everything familiar, have you ever had to fight to be believed about your own experience? If you have, I see you. Your pain is real. Your story matters. You deserve better than the people who made you question yourself. Don't wait for permission to save your own life. Don't wait for them to change. Choose yourself. Build your own family. Create your own safety. You are worth fighting for. If my story resonates with you, if you've been through something similar, or if you just want to support survivors of familial abuse, leave a comment below. Share your story if you're comfortable. Let's build a community where people are believed, where medical abuse is recognized, where choosing yourself isn't seen as selfish but as survival. And if this story helped you in any way, hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means more than you know. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing. And remember, the family you choose is just as valid as the family you're born into. Sometimes, it's even more important.